Welcome to a new episode of the Whet podcast. I am your host, Brenda. Today we bring back my SOMM Like It Hot series, where I interview some of Miami's best in-the-know wine enthusiasts. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah Phillips.
Thank you so much for having me, Brenda.
And I have to say, I have tea, I have water, I have a beautiful Miami view. Cannot complain. Other than parking maybe a little bit. But
we don't like the parking in downtown Miami.
I do not like that. So let's start. I'm so excited for everyone to hear, to learn all about you.
Thank you.
Let's start with your story. Where were you born?
So, as you can probably tell from me speaking,
not at all.
Native Miami. Lived here all my life.
Supposedly, you got that Miami girl accent.
So I grew up in the southwest of England in Bristol until I was about 18. Moved to Scotland for university. I was in Edinburgh, which was amazing, if cold. Mm-hmm. Definitely prefer the climate here, I have to say. And I did a year of studies as well over in New Zealand. So, kind of moved around a little bit, but not too much. Found myself in London slightly after that for the 5 years before moving to Miami, and moved here 4 years ago now. So kind of been around a little bit, but originally, as I said, Bristol, southwest of England.
Okay, and how did you get started into wine? Let's just go right in.
So, I'll start right at the beginning. I used to think that wine tasting... Am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Great.
You can fucking swear.
I can fucking swear.
Yeah.
So I used to think wine tasting was total bullshit. Right.
Okay.
I was not born into, a wine drinking family particularly at all. I sort of thought it was nonsense. So, you'd see these kind of old white men on the TV. Swirling. Yeah, exactly. I can smell raspberries. I was like, that's complete nonsense. So I think that's important context. When I was at university, I started working in a restaurant over the summer after my first year. And the wine distributor came in and gave us this wine tasting. And to be completely honest, all the wine tasted like wine to me. I didn't know what I was doing at all.
Right.
But he was kind of really nice and enthusiastic. And I noticed that his job involved sitting in the sun and drinking wine with people. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool.
Right.
And also I was irritated that I didn't understand the difference.
Right.
And I was like, so it kind of planted the seed. And then I kind of continued working in restaurants, as I was studying, and became slightly more interested in the wine. Obviously lived in New Zealand for a while and visited vineyards there. But it wasn't really until I graduated that I decided I wanted to work in marketing. And I thought, well, why not combine that with something I'm kind of vaguely interested in? And, one of those things was wine. And that just happened to be the job I was offered. So I kind of started working at a company called LiveX in London, which is a fine wine marketplace. A global marketplace for fine wine, I think, is the official tagline now. And really just focused completely from the beginning there in fine wine and fine wine trading and investment. So it was sort of semi-intentional and sort of semi-fell into it. And as I said, when I started working full-time in it, I didn't know much about it at all. And now
you were just going from the marketing angle.
Exactly, yeah. I was interested in marketing. I thought wine's kind of interesting as well. Let's combine these two, and kind of landed there. When I applied for the job there, they asked me to write a short article that was about first growths in Bordeaux. I didn't even know what a first growth was. Which will probably surprise anyone, but really fell down the rabbit hole from that point.
And that would be first growth for anyone listening.
Yes.
I understood what you said, but I can see how someone might not know that.
Yes.
So that's actually like a good way to put it. I would not surprised you didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. It just wasn't the sort of wine I was being exposed to. So it was a different world, and there was a lot of.
But it worked. Your interview worked.
It worked. Okay. I got the job. I don't know
why. Because charisma and.
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe. I don't know. But I got the job, and then continued the education from there. So it was good. And then. Okay, so I was there for working in London for 5 years, all at the same company in fine wine. I took my level 3 WSET, then I took diploma, which I passed in London, and then after 5 years moved to Miami. And that was, we were relocated with my husband's job, nothing.
I was going to say, how did you end up here?
Yeah, exactly. So he works in telecoms, and the company's headquartered here, is the long story short. And actually, I was a little bit against moving to Miami for a long time, which is surprising to everyone again now because I love it so much here and I like the sun. But I kind of thought, gosh, I'm in the centre of the wine world here in London. It's a great city for wine. We're importing, exporting so much. I'm going to so many tastings, learning so much. What's going to happen when I go to Miami? I've never heard of a wine scene there. So I was kind of reluctant. And the company I was working for in London offered to let me keep my job, working remotely, which I did for, on and off kind of a year, 2 years once I moved here, maybe a little longer. But when I got here, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. Now, of course, the Miami wine scene is quite different from London, right? So I turned up to my first wine tasting here. It was a James Suckling event, which I'm sure, well, you're familiar with. We've met each other at these events. And it was the first thing I'd been to in Miami. So I turned up having experience of London wine tastings, and I was wearing my tartan trousers, nice shoes, a jacket, holding a notebook, ready to go. You know where this is going.
And everyone's here. Everyone's going to get plastered.
I walked in, I was like, oh gosh, I've really not prepared. There was a DJ, everyone's in stiletto heels.
Flashy, makeup hair.
I know.
No notebooks.
No notebooks. The narrator in my head's like, she's Dorothy and not in Kansas anymore. Like,
that's so cute. Oh my god.
So that was a wake up call, and it was
great.
But
the last event we went to, I mean, it was a learning. The one you sat next to me. And you were like the only one taking notes still. You were like on the laptop. You're like, I was like, what is she typing?
I'm still a nerd. They haven't lost that.
Yeah. I mean, I was taking like one word, one sentence notes like here and there. And you're like, going off and off on your
I need
laptop.
to type those notes out. That was a great tasting. So that was with Don Meltron.
Yeah, that was great.
And that was at Fiola. It was actually my first time at Fiola. I was really impressed with the food and everything. Yeah, I know you love Fiola.
I love Fiola.
I've seen that on your blog.
I know, I love them. Okay, so that's exciting. So you went to that one and then you went to another one.
Yeah, kept going and discovered that, I mean, actually...
you went because you saw it advertised somewhere or someone recommended it? Okay.
Yeah, I saw it advertised and I, at that point, I'd only been here a few
years. You're like, wine? Yes,
and I like
I'm
wine.
in.
I was like, I like wine. I know wine. I can do this. And I'd met Alessandra Estaves from Florida Wine
that's
Academy.
a great first person to meet.
Great first person to meet. It was awesome.
I was lucky.
Yeah, I'd met her when we visited on our pre-relocation, and actually went to her wine tasting on our visit. And I knew kind of one or two people from Instagram that were going. Right. So I kind of met up with them, and I was like, hey guys,
Isn't
I don't have
funny?
any friends.
I have like a whole Instagram category of friends.
It's great.
Who are not like actively in my life, like they're friends.
It's great. Honestly, it's been like an amazing way of meeting people since being here, especially kind of within the wine community. I think it's awesome. Kind of a great way to be engaged and kind of get to know people. But that event was great. And then, as I kind of went, I realized that actually there is a wine scene in Miami. You've just got to kind of look for it. And it's changed.
Perhaps there's parallel wine scenes in Miami, right? Like there's a lot going on. There's the industry side. There's the social side. The one, the first one you went, right? And then there's the in between, which is kind of like me. Like I'm kind of learning, but I'm also socializing. Like a little bit of both.
And there's a lot of overlap as well between those. You know, what I've been really kind of fortunate to meet some amazing collectors here in Miami who have been very generous. I've tasted wines.
Did you go to that Palm Beach one? You guys were posting about that. I don't know if you were posting about it too. Jacqueline posted about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example.
The recent one.
That's a great example. So I've got a great friend in Palm Beach, Corey Lipoff, who is an incredible seller and is just so generous with wine students and industry people.
You were drinking DRC?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was dying.
But, the interesting thing is when I was in London, I was writing about these wines from a kind of market performance point of view and, investment point of view, and I'd never tasted them. And it's amazing now that I've kind of been here and been fortunate enough to kind of have the experience of tasting those amazing, unique wines. So I'm really grateful for that. And again, that's something I wasn't expecting when I came here. I was like, hopefully there'll be something that isn't just Malbec. I like Malbec, but it's really been different to what I expected in a good way.
You thought, that's an interesting point. You thought there would be a lot of Malbec here because of the gateway location in Miami, versus geographic. Thinking like wine country like Napa and
I mean, I guess compared to the UK, you see obviously more domestic US wines here than you do in the UK market, for obvious reasons, proximity and maybe slightly greater representation of South American wines as well, versus, in the UK you'll see slightly more European, but there's a ton of Malbec in the UK as well. So no, it was kind of just me thinking, I wonder what's going to be here. I hope I can find wine friends and an interesting wine community, and it's just completely, shattered my expectations in a great way. So
tell us about, let's see, we might be here an hour just discussing this alone, because just from everything that I've seen, your current official place of employment, or is that employment or projects? I know there's you're all over the place doing so many different things.
Yeah, how long do you have? So
it's fine.
Yeah, it's
fine.
There's
editing and we're good.
I'll kind of summarize. So probably the main thing I do is
remember the listeners don't know anything. So
yeah. So the main thing I do is I'm working for a think tank, which is called Arini Global, and I'm the head of membership there. It is still part-time.
What is it called?
Arini Global.
Arini.
So Arini was the cave in, I think, actually let's edit this bit out. Arini, Areni.
Okay.
And what we do is basically bring together amazing people in the wine world, forward thinkers and so on, to collaborate and talk about issues that are pertinent to the future of fine wine. Things like, environmental issues, regulatory issues, things like, how we improve wine education, things like that. Bring all these people together, create a series of articles, podcasts, and so on, just to kind of, pull together all of the sort of resources that come with all of these people's experiences. So that's been a really interesting project. I've been doing that for just over a year now, and that's been really interesting. And I'm very grateful for the interesting people I get to meet through that and the interesting topics I get to engage with. So that's one thing. And then on top of that, I'm doing a little bit of wine sales here in Miami, which has been... So the way this started is my friend Nick Jackson, who's a master of wine in Palm Beach, started an import company. So he brings in a number of European wines now. When your friend becomes an importer, you become a salesperson. So I kind of picked up his portfolio in Miami. That's grown a bit now because we're now also working with a broker called Pro Vintners, so the portfolio is broadened. And I've literally just taken on a second book now at an importer based in Orlando called Cork Capital. And the reason I did that is because he has Ross Cobb's wines. Now, Ross Cobb, if you've seen the menu, which you probably will have done as a food enthusiast, is a very, very well-respected producer in Sonoma, West Sonoma Coast, actually, California, whose wines I love, and I really wanted to sell them. So I'm doing that the sales there. So that's sales to
consumers, to straight to restaurants,
and retailers. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
And retailers.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I do a bunch of other things, which is, primarily around wine events. So I do monthly tastings at Ruka Wine Bar in Wynwood, which is really fun. We get together.
I know, I haven't been to one
yet.
Yeah, I know.
We've got one next month on Austria, so I'll send you an invite.
Okay.
And we get, 30 people together typically. I've got a screen, I do a presentation. We kind of make it fun, but also educational. And I do private tastings, teach classes, write a bit about wine. All the wine things, basically.
All the wine things.
Yeah.
And your newsletter, tell the listeners.
Yes, so we have myself and my friend Jacqueline Coleman have a website, wineguidemiami.com. And the idea with that is, well, I initially thought, hey, I'd love to have a wine column, but there wasn't any space in any local publications. So I thought, well, I'll just make my own.
I don't know if there's any space as much as they're not making space for it.
I'm probably being polite.
Yeah, okay. I don't have to be polite.
So whatever the reason, it's not there. So I decided to create this website and ask Jacqueline to, be involved as well. And now we run that. So we post, events that are happening every month, occasionally like restaurant reviews, reviews about wines, things like that. And it's been a really fun project. So yeah, I'm busy, but it's good.
Yeah. Are you sure that's it? I feel like there's something missing.
There probably is. We
might remember
at some point.
So what is the most rewarding part of this career path for you?
I think, there's so many. One of the things, oddly, actually, when I became interested in working in wine was I just thought, what an amazing opportunity to meet people from all around the world. And I like that it's a very global industry and that I'm talking to people from all around the world on a daily basis. I find that quite, satisfying. But I think recently it's been really, and the role with Arini is great for that. But, recently as well, delivering the classes, hosting tastings, and kind of being able to get people excited about wine and thinking about it in a different way is really satisfying. And it is quite a rewarding part of the job as well.
How's your Spanish now?
Terrible.
No, is
terrible. It's so bad. Actually, I mean, when we did the bio, I skipped the 3 months I spent in Spain.
Oh.
But I this was a long time ago. I decided, it's pathetic that I only speak one language. So I did an 11-week intensive Spanish course, but that doesn't get you that far.
No.
At peak Spanish, have you watched the film Borat?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I think at my peak, I was like speaking Spanish like
Oh my
Borat
God.
speaks English.
Okay.
So that was my prime, and I'm rusty. So now I'm like rusty Borat.
I have a Borat story to tell you, but I'll tell you off the air. I can't share that on the podcast. At least not yet.
All right. I'll look forward to that.
So some industry pet peeves.
The one recently, I would say, is I think there's often an expectation to do work for free in this industry.
Yes.
So, and that's a problem. And we've got to be careful. There's a line here. If a student comes up to me or someone who's really enthusiastic and wants to get into wine or needs some advice, of course I'm happy to help. There's a line. There's a difference between that and an importer you've never met messaging you on Instagram asking you for your contact book or recommendations of where to sell their wine.
Someone just did that to me.
Really, it happens all the time.
And I did help. I mean, it's like consulting.
Exactly.
I was like,
That's
should I charge a consulting fee?
That's
for this
consulting.
because it's consulting. So I have my little side note, contacts. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was nice and I just gave them a few. Few. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, you always want to help people in this industry.
And that's
right?
why I felt bad. Like,
exactly. I mean, my approach now is kind of, here's some articles that mention some great restaurants that,
right.
Or whatever. Here's some ideas. But, if you want me to work for you, then that's a different arrangement.
Right.
Because otherwise you can spend your whole day kind of offering, free
right, and it's
advice.
because it's something that we're passionate about. We don't just throw out names. We get at least I get all into it. And then there's this, or even when people ask me about restaurants, or I'm like, and this and that. So I've toned it down a lot because I put too much. I'm like, I don't even know this person.
Yeah.
And you're doing a whole research article for this person.
Exactly.
It's so dumb, but
I know
it's in the spirit of helping. But then multiply that times 20 people asking you the same thing. It's kind of like
Yeah. But then, I mean, okay, so on the flip side of this, what do I like most about this industry is how willing and helpful people often are. Mm-hmm. I've been studying for the Master of Wine, and that's kind of enormously, I've talked about the generosity of collectors, but also the generosity of people in the trade with their knowledge, because we have to learn, a huge range of things. And you really can't do that without kind of nagging people to give you their industry secrets. So, I think there's different circumstances, isn't there? And as I said, I'm always happy to help, students or people.
What are your
who need
current certifications
advice.
And your all the tests? You said you had the WSET3.
Yeah, so I've gone down the WSET route. So I've done up to the diploma level 4. Which is the highest level you can do with WSET, and I'm currently studying on the Master of Wine program. So I've passed all of stage 1. I've passed the stage 2 theory exams. I'm sitting the tasting exams again in June, and then they have a very low pass rate. So let's be optimistic. If I do pass them, then there's a research paper, and then it's done.
Okay, so you don't have to do the service part. That's just for maybe Master SOMM.
That's Master SOMM. Yeah, fortunately, there's no service element. That would be a problem for me.
Okay. Briefly walk us through, in your experience, what it took to learn, sniff, and taste wine properly.
A lot of practice. I mean, like I said,
I just drink and no things.
No, I mean, really, honestly, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. And, it didn't come that naturally. I'm willing to be honest about that. So a lot of practice, a lot of kind of thoughtful tasting, I would say. Not just drinking, but really thinking about it, reading about it. And then really importantly, having mentors who can help you understand what's in the glass and make you realize and notice things that you perhaps haven't picked up on yourself. And then just rinse and repeat all of that a lot.
So have you read Cork Dork?
I have, a long time ago.
A long time ago. But she says, I was fascinated by the book because she was so honest and or came across as honest. I don't know how honest it was, the whole story, but about how she said just being aware. So if you're walking down the street and don't just walk down the street. Like, what are you smelling?
Yeah.
What do you get?
Yeah.
Is that garbage?
Yeah.
Is that a tree? Is it a magnolia tree? Like, what are you, like, just being aware. And I tried that once in a while when I remembered to this. She said at the supermarket, pick up everything, smell everything, touch everything. I was exhausted after a week. I was so aware. Like I said, I'm doing this, and everywhere I went, and I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm smelling things. But it does help. It does help. Yeah. But it's exhausting to just be on at all times.
Exactly, it is exhausting. And I think, the point about exhaustion is a good one, because wine tasting, I mean, okay, cry me a river, but like, it's poor me, but it is tiring. It's like, my mentor in the Master of Wine program pointed this out to me recently. She said, Sarah, it's a physical thing. It's not just, it's not just typing an exam. It's also a physical exercise, and you have to be kind of rested for it. I'm not very good at rest. But.
How do you feel about just random things I've read? Or she talked about this in the book too, like waking up, not brushing your teeth versus getting that minty, fresh teeth brushing in if you're going straight to like a test where you're going to taste.
I could not.
I mean, it sounded gross.
It's gross. I could not leave the room without brushing my teeth.
I know, but
I'd
then
be
she
sat
said that
there,
if
like,
you
miserable.
like you have Colgate, like the minty stuff, and then you're going straight to taste, and then she said it like messed up with her palate.
I think so. Our tasting exams are in the morning, and I think if you wake up, brush your teeth straight away, and then eat breakfast, then you lose the mint.
Right, you lose something.
There's no way I would go without brushing my teeth. I'd just be sat there feeling like sad.
Right, don't talk to me.
No one come near me. I'd find it off-putting.
But you pass with flying colors.
Well, we'll see. But no, I think that there's some psychology to it as well. It's not just the physical elements. Like one Master of Wine said, first time she sat the exams, went in sweatpants, and the second time she was like, well, I wanted to feel like myself, so I put on a pretty pink dress.
Okay.
It's like, that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
That's cool. Brush your teeth and wear a nice dress.
Brush your teeth and wear a nice dress. And if it's pink,
I think that's much more me.
I like that. And like almost like dress for the part you want, not the part. Exactly. What is it? What's that saying?
It's like, I know what you mean. It's like dress for
the part you want, not the part. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess just act like you own it. Like
exactly.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. What is a common wine myth you'd like dispelled?
That sulfites give you headaches.
Yes. Tell us why.
Because it's not true, and people. I just think it's misguiding. I think you might be asking me about parts of the industry I dislike as well, so we can link this in. But clean wine, I mean, the whole myth, and anything to do with health marketing and wine.
No, but just a lot of people, just in general, they dismiss red wine. Like I'll meet, Larry and I go out to dinner, or meet friends, and we know you're winos. We can't drink red wine. It gives us a headache. Yeah, and I'm like, you're just such a blanket statement. Like you've drank every region, every soil, every like.
But I mean, realistically, I'm not a doctor, caveat. But I mean, realistically, the thing that gives you headaches is being dehydrated and drinking too much. So if you don't want a headache, drink less or find wines that are lower in alcohol. And then that's a much better solution. Unless sulfites are added to wine to preserve it and make it taste fresh. There's absolutely, unless you're severely asthmatic, which is a tiny % of the population, the quantity that's in wine is not harmful. And it's just become, people get fixated on it when there are lots of other things to worry about, like not getting in your car after you've had a few drinks, or making sure you don't overdo it and say something stupid. There's other things to be mindful about that aren't sulfites. And I'm just like, why are we still talking about this?
Why
it's not even
true. Messy drunk. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's fix like the actual issues.
I love that. I really love that. How do you feel about natural corks, and do synthetic and screw caps merit the same respect? And do you believe they yield the same outcome?
So I have an interesting story about this. So my answer is it depends on the wine. So when I was at the Master Wine Seminar last year, and we were tasting lots of the Robert Mondavi wines in a masterclass. And we were tasting lots of different vintages, and they served us this flight of 4 wines that all tasted very different. We were told, it's all the same label, basically. And we all assumed they were different vintages, and we were trying to guess what the vintages were. And then they revealed at the end they were actually all something like 20 years old, but closed with different closures.
Love that.
Which is, it's so rare that you ever get to do the same wine side by side with different closures. So we had, I think there were 2 different types of screw cap, because they couldn't have, the thing that makes wine evolve is the oxygen transfer coming through the capsule that reacts with the wine in the bottle. 2 different types of screw cap, the glass closure and natural cork. Because 20 years ago, the diam, the little diced up pieces of cork, that wasn't really around. And they all tasted very different. But before we were told that this was the experiment, we were asked to vote on which were our favourites. And the room was pretty split. The glass closure didn't do very well. I don't think they're as effective for long-term storage, but the screw caps did well. So I think it really depends on the result you want from the wine, what the winemaker wants to do, and how they want that wine to evolve. Not sure that one is better than the other. Perhaps, the other answer is, if it's wine you're picking off the shelf today to drink tomorrow, it doesn't really matter.
Versus aging.
If you've got a screw cap, you don't have the risk, or you have a lower risk of taint in the wine. Mm-hmm. But you certainly can age wine under screw cap based on that experiment that we did.
Long term? How many decades?
These were 20-year-old bottles.
Oh, they were already 20.
I don't think so. The kind of improved. There's been a lot of work done to improve screw caps, and I think the more recent ones, for literally for practical time reasons, haven't been tested for 50 years. Right. So we don't know. But potentially you would just get a different result. Whether that's better or worse is up for discussion, and we'll find out maybe in 30 years. There's experiments being done on it now.
There's something romantic about
popping a cork,
and then just and then it's wet, and I don't know.
I like the pop. I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. I do like. When I worked in restaurants, we were told, if you open screw cap, make sure you can hear the crack of the bottle.
Right.
But it's not the same.
Not right. I agree. Where would you steer a person wanting to learn more about wine?
My classes. No, I think
Phillips.com. No.
Yeah. Yeah, at Wine by Sarah. No, I would say, it really depends on how engaged they want to be. Of course, if you want to dive into it, you can take wine classes. WSET is
I think just a regular person, just who wants to learn, how you said you were intrigued that time.
Yeah.
And okay, so I'm intrigued. What is there to know?
I think
start.
The easiest thing you can do is strike up a relationship. Strike up a relationship with your local wine shop. Independent wine stores are amazing. They're always doing tastings. Often they're free, or they're very low, very low cost, and they're informal. And that's a great way to begin to taste. And also, when you know someone at a local store, they'll begin to understand what you like. They'll be able to help you, guide you into different regions and different styles. And that's a great way to learn while supporting local businesses as well.
What is a good starter wine for someone who is, I don't like wine, but I'll try it, but I don't like wine.
I don't like wine.
I like Coke.
I like Coke. It depends. I would probably
like vodka.
I'd start by asking them what they like. If they say White Claw, then you put them onto rosé prosecco or something.
Okay.
If they say I drink a ton of coffee, then maybe you get a Cabernet from Chile. I don't think there's a starter wine.
Right.
There's what do you drink at the moment, and how can we kind of meet you where you are? Is where I would
It's true, because we've recommended, we love this, such and such wine, and it was like a bomb for someone, oh my God, this is so strong, or they weren't ready.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
Right, so we started them too strong, I guess,
exactly.
But so I always like asking that question, I like that, so what do you drink on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Hey, coffee, all right.
Yeah, here's some really big cab if you like bitterness, or if you like White Claw, or if you like, Sprite, you like a little bit of sweetness. Here's a slightly off-dry Prosecco. I don't know.
That.
That's how I would go.
I like that.
Or here's an amazing vintage champagne that's just going to make you go, wow.
I've stopped for restaurants and wine. We have stopped making things too big, too exciting, or you're going to love this restaurant because blah, 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 because that's the surest way for someone to be like, okay, yeah, we didn't really love it, or it's like human psychology. So we're like, okay, you want recommendations? Okay, this is what we recommend. End of story. You tell me what you thought.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it.
Exactly. That's much safer.
Because I get so excited. I'm like, oh, I want you to try this and try that.
I want you to love it.
Because I'm passionate about it. And then people suck. Okay, so list your top favorite wine books, movies, or documentaries for beginners. To spark that interest.
I love, there's a book called Wine and War. Have you read that?
I have not. It's on my list. Good. I have it in my audio, I think, cart.
Okay, definitely.
So that or on Amazon. Yeah,
definitely pump that up. So it's about the role of wine during the Second World War in France. And it just really shows how wine was such an integral, and it still is, an integral part of French culture, and the lengths that winemakers went to protect it. So that's a strong favourite. From a kind of academic point of view, I love Jancis Robinson's World Atlas of Wine because I'm a map geek, and it really helps me to kind of visualise regions, and also see which are interesting properties to visit, perhaps. So those are great. Did you ask for movies and things like that?
Yeah, everything. Documentaries.
Do you know how many documentaries and things I really watch about wine? It's like when you ask a doctor if they watch like hospitals.
True.
What was the one with Rudy Kurniawan in? It's on Netflix, about wine fraud.
Oh my gosh, that's
Sour
a good
Grapes.
one. Yes,
Sour Grapes. That was good.
The guy with all the bottles in his apartment and the labels and
yes, that was crazy. And actually related to that, there's a book called Billionaire's Vinegar, and that's about a fraudster who was kind of before Rudy Kurniawan, who you've seen in Sour Grapes, called Hardy Rodenstock, and he famously created fraudulent bottles that he claimed were owned by Thomas Jefferson.
Oh my God!
And it was a huge scandal back in the day, but the book is very, very well written. So I'm kind of giving you history and that sort of area, which I think.
But that's fine.
Yeah, that's when I suppose for leisure reading, that's kind of where I'm at.
That. And how do you feel about documentaries such as like the SOMM series? I don't know if you saw it, but driving up interest in certifications and the whole process.
Yeah, I think if they encourage people to become interested and engaged in wine, then that's a great thing. I'm not sure we need, the whole kind of cult personalities in wine so much, as we've seen in the last, the people in the documentary weren't obviously related to the scandal. Some of them actually resigned their titles in protest, but I'm not sure the kind of cult of personality thing is healthy in the wine world, shall we say. So if it encourages that, that's not good. If it encourages people to get interested in wine, great, all for it.
Yeah, I thought it was really eye-opening. I don't think people knew just what it took to study for the test and all that stuff, like the intensity. I mean, you're watching this like, are they going to pass?
I know. Do you know, the one, that's true. I mean, it is like, it does, I have directed friends to it to be like, look, it is crazy. But the one slightly frustrating thing for me is now everyone thinks that the only job in the wine world is being a SOMM.
Right.
And I'm like, guys, I'm not a SOMM. Like, you can call me that if you want, but it's not accurate. And then they're like, oh, so what do you do if you're not a SOMM? Like,
I mean, but you can be called a SOMM, I think, just because it's not in a restaurant.
Yeah. I
guess it's a very, it's blurred lines. I don't think it's very defined. Like, a lot of times I do get asked, well, there's people that work as a SOMM and they have no certification. Yeah. They've just, they're in that position. And sometimes very nice restaurants. Yeah. They're just knowledgeable, or they've been around, or they have experience. And they're not necessarily, and they're called a SOMM, but there's no one thing, like let's say med school, there's no one thing that's, you could take the WSET, or you could take, there's so many, right, there's like 3 or 4, it just, which route did you go?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think just with the word SOMM, people get kind of,
you think
there's something around it, so I stay away,
right. I'm a wine educator.
I'm just a wine person.
I said a wine enthusiast when I introduced you. So
yeah, that's fine. That's true. I am enthusiastic.
A wine enthusiast. How do you feel about the current Miami wine scene overall, now that you've been here?
I think it's a really exciting place to be. It's been really dynamic. The last 4 years, it's changed a lot, as I said, and I've heard from others that have been here for longer that it's changed dramatically. If you go back further, I think one of the comments someone told me, it used to be the Wild West of wine down here, and that doesn't seem to be true anymore. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of new restaurants opening. There's a lot of SOMMs here doing great things. There's retailers popping up everywhere. It's an exciting place to be because it feels like it's growing fast, and it's not stuck in tradition as well. there's benefits to being in a very traditional wine market, but Miami's kind of being able to invent itself now, and I think that's quite exciting.
I do. I think it's a really exciting time for it. What tips would you give a diner to order wine at a restaurant? Like what to look for? That menu can be very overwhelming.
I think, if you've got a SOMM, use them. That's what they're there for. Mm-hmm. But I think, when you've got a SOMM, a great thing to do is just be really upfront about how much you want to spend.
I agree.
And then, tell them what you like. Here's what I want to spend. Here's the kind of experience.
That's what we always lead with.
Yeah.
This is more or less where we are.
Here's the budget.
Here's the budget. And help.
Yeah. That's what if there's a few, I'll point out, I'm stuck between these 3 or 4 or whatever. I study wine. I think about it all day. If I go into a restaurant, I'm like, I'm not the one that chose this list. You've tasted all of them.
Right. Tell me what to drink. I know.
I have no shame in that. It's just
that's true.
I want to use that knowledge. It's valuable.
That's what I get mad when they don't have someone. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have someone? This is like a really nice restaurant. What's happening?
Help.
Is there any wine trend that you think needs to go away?
Clean wine.
Agree.
Clean wine needs to go. It's so bad. Oh gosh, don't get me started. We could do a whole hour on this. But the idea, as I said, I think anything that sort of tries to... Health marketing in wine is bad. Wine is alcohol. Moderate your drinking. Mm-hmm. That's it. I love drinking wine. I'm not thinking about the bad things all the time, but you've got to be careful. Marketing wine as like a health product is bad. Don't do it. Trying to make false claims about how your wine is somehow kind of healthier than others.
Drives me insane.
Drives me crazy.
Drives me insane. Just this weekend I had a girls' night, and a couple of my friends are on this diet, and she walks in and she's holding this bottle of wine like a baby, and I looked at her and I said, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Don't get mad at me." And I said, "What?" So she pulls out the wine, and the wine is called something like Health.
Oh no.
Healthin or Health Vine.
Fit Vine.
I don't think it was Fit Vine. I think it said literally health on it. But maybe it was Fit.
Oh God.
But she was so proud of her choice. And she said, and she was basically like, "Don't get mad." And she was like holding it like a baby. She's like, "Don't get mad at me." She said, "But we're committed to this diet." And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is stupid. But okay. And I just said, do you?
If you
I wasn't there to lecture anybody. I was like,
there is no healthier option. If you want a healthier option, buy a lower alcohol wine or drink something that's not alcohol.
Right. But yeah, so she went to the store and somebody apparently said, "Okay, so you're on a diet, so have this instead." And she bought it.
But
the
fascinating thing, some of these products that I've seen in certain stores that kind of market themselves as being healthy, and you look on the back, and I won't mention the brand, but one of them, is marketed as like, wine for, athletes, healthy people, whatever. And you look at that, it's Pinot Grigio at 13.5 or 14%. It is not difficult to get a Pinot Grigio that's lower in alcohol than that. They haven't even tried. It's crazy. I don't know. And, they say there's no added sugar. That's that's a very, very unusual thing anyway. It's not a real selling point. Gluten-free is not a real selling point.
I think it's someone like a friend who's into that, and they just go in and they're marketed this product, and it works, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Celebrities, as we've...
Yeah, Cameron Diaz.
Yes, Cameron Diaz. That's exactly
we'll just say that one.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Anyway, okay. Wine trend prediction for 2023.
Oh, wow. Wine trend prediction. I think sparkling's going to continue to boom. That's been going... The sparkling wine market's been going nuts for a while now, and I don't see any sign of that slowing. People want to party, have fun. Sparkling is great.
Especially in Miami, I think.
Especially in Miami, yeah. So I think that's where we're going. And unfortunately, I think we're going to continue to see the clean wine thing continue.
Yeah. What about labeling? Where's that? I know there's like a whole push for labeling with ingredients.
Yeah, ingredients.
Right now it is the Wild West of labeling. You don't have to say much.
You don't have to say much. So in Europe, it's about to be... It should soon be required. I think they're allowed to provide the ingredients via QR code on a website. I'm not completely up to date on that, and I believe the TTB, Trade and Tobacco Bureau in the US, is considering a similar scheme, but I don't know exactly where they're at. But again, I think the most important ingredients, it's not ingredients really, it's components of a wine are already on the bottle, and that's the alcohol level. If we start putting everything else on the label, I think it distracts from the only ingredient that is potentially harmful, or not ingredient, component, and people get distracted by it.
Well, there's also pesticides.
They wouldn't show up on any.
They wouldn't.
No, because that's just sprayed on, or occasionally sprayed on the grapes in the vineyard, or often sprayed on the grapes in the vineyard. So that labeling is already available because you would have organic or not organic. Right. So that's visible. Anything that's permitted in wine as an ingredient or a component is safe. So I'm kind of on the side where I don't necessarily see value. I think it just distracts from the important point, which is the alcohol level. But I'm kind of on a limb with that view. Most people don't agree with me.
Well, going back to that Cork Dork book, which I learned on that because there was a lot of new intel that she was saying. And then towards the end of the book, she does a deep dive into visiting some of these Napa, more commercialized wineries, her argument was, so you have this $15 bottle that actually tastes like a nicer bottle, like a more expensive bottle. But the reasoning is, they are chemically being produced to taste like this other one, which has had much less, it has been, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's like lower intervention.
Right, less intervention. And this one it's just chemically made taste like the one that was more organically produced or whatever. But, this was $15 and this was $80. So my thought is that one that's chemically produced has to have like a shit ton of crap in it. Chemicals wise.
So the interesting thing about this, so there are things that you can add to wine, but producers don't want to add it because adding stuff costs more money, right? It's much cheaper just to have grapes. That's the cheapest way to make wine. So it's kind of, I don't remember exactly the number. It's about 70, let's say, additives that are permitted to use in winemaking. A lot of those will be filtered out. Some of them will stay in the wine. And the famous one is Mega Purple, which is like a kind of concentrated grape syrup thing that adds colour and a little bit of flavour to your wine. All of them are harmless, but you and I love artisan wines that are authentically made, whatever authentic means, lovingly made by the winemaker and so on and so forth. But there is a small part of me that thinks, if someone can't afford to spend $90 on a bottle of wine, why not offer them that experience for $15? If the, I would like to think I could taste the difference. I was only
talking about labeling wise, like the chemical part.
Yeah.
Like, so those that
so
are
transparency.
adding. Yeah, like they're adding because now you're making it, now it's like a whole thing in a lab. It's a lab wine versus, you start with the grapes, but then goes to a lab where it's like being analyzed and.
Yeah. I mean,
almost like it reminds me of those, like, you have the actual perfumes, the beautiful fragrances, from the big 4 like fragrance houses, and then you have these that they're like, oh, so you like such and such, this is our $15, it smells just like it.
Exactly.
And then so that's the same thing, except it's just a fragrance versus.
I mean, I guess it's good to offer the consumer, if the consumer's interested in transparency, then sure. I mean, give it. It's just like it becomes technically slightly more complicated than you would expect, because there's a lot of what's called processing agents that are used when making wine that don't really end up in the final product at all. Do you add them as well? Do you not? And then when you're looking at ingredient labeling, is it just things that have been added, or is it the nutritional value of the wine at the end? Because
and then you have to see who's going to overlook this and
who's going to
what's the word, police it?
Who's going to police it? That's very difficult unless you're sending bottles to labs. It's very challenging. But sugar is a great example of this, because you could add, concentrated grape must to a wine. That's an ingredient. But you could also, you've got naturally occurring sugar in grape juice. So if you stop your fermentation, you get sugar left. So you've got 2 products that might have exactly the same amount of sugar in it. But if you're only labeling ingredients, then one of them will say that on the label and one won't. So I think it's an important topic, but it's a lot more complicated than people think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah,
I haven't seen, I guess there's bouts of interest, and it makes the headlines, and then it disappears for a year, and then it's comes back again.
Yeah,
one of those.
I mean, it's an interesting topic. And I guess ultimately, why should wine get away without ingredient labeling when every food product has to abide by it?
And there's fraud in that too. I mean, there's loopholes and
That's
fraud, and I'm sure someone's going to find a way to lie and make theirs look better. Okay, so back to Sarah.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, gosh. Oh, I don't know. I mean, 5 years ago, I was in London. And I thought, I'm in London now. I'm going to be here. Now I'm in Miami. I'd love to have passed the exams. That's the only sort of future thing. Well, we'll see. Yeah, June. I'd love to have passed the exams. Then we'll see. I don't know. I'm doing a lot of different interesting things at the moment and kind of seeing where each of them takes me. So we'll see. I don't have a definitive answer, I'm afraid.
Would Miami still be in play for you?
I would like to be in Miami. Yeah, I've got to wait for some paperwork to come through the post, and hopefully, we do love it here. We love the lifestyle, the weather. We've made great friends. The wine scene's awesome, so we'd be very happy to still be here.
Okay, what would someone be surprised to learn about you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm not very surprising actually. Probably, I mean, maybe the thing, going back to what I said at the beginning, that I used to think the wine tasting was bullshit and I couldn't taste the difference between anything, which is a little different to where I am now. But I'm always happy to confess that, because I think I
still think there's a little bit of that where it's not bullshit, obviously, but I think I could see why.
Yeah. Because
sometimes I look at people like describing or ordering wine, and maybe someone thinks out of us, like the way we,
totally.
But sometimes I'm
sure they do.
I'm like, come on. I'm like, just drink.
I know. Sometimes I even think that myself.
Actually, what's a great example? Twitter.
Oh,
Twitter.
Gosh.
So usually I post on weekends. I post my sips. So I'll say like Saturday sips, Sunday sips, Friday sips. Whenever I'm drinking, I'll just put such and such sips.
You drink some nice wine.
Thank you. So sometimes I'm cerebral about it, right? So sometimes if it's just Larry and I, we'll sit there and we're being really obnoxious. We're like, okay, so we're like testing each other. What do you get? And then we'll say what we think, and then we go to the notes to see if we got it right, or like what it's officially listed as, so we're geeky about it sometimes. Other times I just want to fucking drink.
Yeah, I agree.
So then I'll post a wine, and someone for sure is going to ask, what are the tasting notes?
Oh no.
So I have this like stock answer, like, today I was drinking, not tasting.
Yeah.
Which might not make sense to someone, but leave me alone. I'm just at a restaurant. I just want to drink my wine. I
agree.
But then I'll post, God forbid I post a Bordeaux that is younger than 20 years old. Oh my gosh. The lecturing I get on Twitter. It's like, that is a crime. You're a murderer. I'm like, I just want to drink my wine.
Leave me alone.
I'm not going to share it anymore. But I do, because I get more, I mean, I like saying I do recommend it, I don't recommend it. I love seeing when someone posts something that I'm interested in drinking. Like when you all drank the DRC, I'm like, oh my God, that was fantastic. I wanted to know all about it. But not in a police kind of way. Not like I'm policing you, like, don't say that, don't do this, don't do that. Like all these rules. At the end of the day, just enjoy the wine.
I agree.
But Twitter, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of judging, and you're doing this wrong, and it's their Twitter where the highway.
There's no way to do it wrong. As long as you're enjoying it, you're doing it right.
I mean, I can't. I guess I can't be a hypocrite. I mean, there are things that we've been like judgy about, like we go to a restaurant, there's like the terrible wine glasses, and then you're drinking this, or we brought a beautiful wine, and I'm drinking out of this thing where it should be like a chocolate shake.
So this happened to me in Sonoma. We were there a few weeks ago, and me and my husband, and we'd been to visit Ross Cobb, who I talked about earlier, and he very kindly sent us home with a few open bottles from the tasting. So we decided to take one. It was like nearly full, so we were like, we're going out for dinner tonight. We can't obviously take this home on the flight. Let's take it.
Right.
Beautiful Pinot Noir with like amazing, like expressive aromatics, and they gave us a glass, and I'm sorry you can't see this on the podcast. I'm pointing at Brenda's little glass tumbler for water, and I was like, I just can't drink this wine.
Right. So there are things, I guess, I'm being a hypocrite. They're same.
So I was like, we'll just take half a bottle of Candidly instead.
I mean, you might as well drink it out of the bottle. I was like, what do you do?
Literally, what is this?
It does change the flavor. I don't know what it is. You can drink it out of a solo cup.
I hate bad wine glasses. It's like the worst.
Yeah, I told Larry, I'm like, let's just take our, we already take a little bag. We could have like backup glasses in there.
I respect that.
And he refuses. He's like, no. I've also said about silverware.
Do it anyway. Don't tell him.
I'm like, we should also
Switch
take
them
our
out when
own
it goes to the bathroom.
silverware. That's true, but I think the way we're drinking, we'll probably forget them.
Yeah.
If I do silverware, I'll probably forget the silverware. I don't know, but sometimes if it's like very thick, like
thick
lip
glasses.
Oh my god! I'm like, this is supposed to be a vanilla shake, not like this beautiful wine.
I know, it's so bad.
Anyway, so anything else you would like to add that we haven't discussed or talked about?
I don't think so. I feel like we've been pretty comprehensive.
Where can listeners find you and all of your projects?
Wow. You can find me on Instagram. That's the best
How many Instagram accounts can we find you?
A few.
Thank you. My point exactly.
No, the main one would be at What Sarah Drinks.
Okay.
Sarah with an H. I also have a website, winebysarah.net.
Sarah with an H at the end?
Sarah with an H. And then you can find information there. Also wineguidemiami.com and at wineguidemiami. And on those various places, I'll be posting about tastings and things like that.
And the newsletter. Yeah, that's once you go to the wine.
Tasting, private tasting.
Everything.
All the things.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We got it done. It is fun. And I'm so excited for listeners to learn and go to all your websites, and I hope they tell you that they found you here because they listened to the podcast. That's it for today. Remember to follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and TikTok, and the website, and the podcast.
All the things.
I'm doing all the Sarah things.
Thank you for having me, Brenda. This has been fun.
Yay, love it. And that's it for today. Bye. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.
Vamos.